When I think of software engineer, I think of creativity. And that's what we need. We need more creative software engineers. And that's what we're talking about today on Product Driven. Talking to one of the largest creative agencies in the world, has thousands of software engineers and very bright people building all sorts of cool stuff for the biggest brands that you know. And we're going to talk to their CTO today about how they manage and lead their creative engineers. To survive and thrive, you must adopt a product-driven mindset. And we're back for another episode of Product Driven. This is your host, Matt Watson, and very excited to be joined today by David Mitchell, who is the CTO of the Americas, right, at VML, which is one of the largest creative ad agencies in the world. They have 30,000 employees or some insane number. And they're based here in Kansas City, which is really cool. But today, what I really want to talk to you about, David, is this idea of creative engineers. And I think we need more of them. I think maybe we used to be really creative, and then I think it feels like big tech kind of took away some of our creativity. So I'd love to talk to you about that today.
Oh my gosh.
Welcome to the show, David.
Hey, thanks, Matt. It is an absolute pleasure. I've been a big fan of your companies in Kansas City, and a recent fan of the Product Driven podcast and your earlier podcast as well. So it's great to be here.
So when you think of a creative ad agency, you guys get to do all sorts of cool stuff, right? Like people come to you with sort of crazy problems, business problems, big brands, right? They come to you and like, we want to do this Super Bowl ad and big campaign, or like, you know, you're working for big travel companies and
yeah,
hotels. You're working for all these people, and they come to you with like wild ideas, and your team has to be really creative on how to engineer some of this stuff, right?
Absolutely. This is this is the first time I've worked for a company that's an advertising agency. My background is more, working for IT or software companies, and I was reaching the end of some work, my career at Sprint. A lot of people in Kansas City have worked at Sprint, now T-Mobile. And
It's a rite of
so
passage.
I knew I was changing, and I had some time, and I was out on just the speaking circuit, getting around and getting to know people. And I met someone from VML who was at this, he was at one of those Hack Midwest, not Hack Midwest, but some kind of small conference. And he made it sound like super interesting. And I landed there, and immediately got put on some really interesting work that wasn't actually advertising work. And my first, I think, decade at VML, I had probably, by the time that decade ended, probably over 100 people reporting to me. And I would joke, I was like, well, I work at this advertising agency, and I don't think I've worked on an advertisement. And I see people at work that work on advertisements. We do, like you said, Super Bowl spots. So we do every communication you see from Wendy's, right? That every tweet, every TV ad, every radio spot. And we also do a lot of work with what is the experience of being an employee or being a customer and an employee of Wendy's. And so, it's been fascinating work in that we do get access to do a lot of crazy things, and clients demand that we bring creative thinking. But it's been an interesting ride in terms of challenging engineering work, and nearly all of the things that we build are public systems. So you mentioned airlines. We've done work for major international airlines, working with underlying platforms like Amadeus, which controls all the pricing of all international flights, and building, getting patents for airline companies on the way that they devise booking engines and things like that. So, really fascinating work, and great work where you can really show it off to family and friends and say hey, you see that over there? My team built that, or something like that.
Well, so I want to ask you, what do you think of when you think of creative engineer? Because to some degree, shouldn't all software engineers be creative?
Yes, and it's one of the things that I've loved, thematically listening to this show, is I think you ask engineers to say, be more product focused, right? And I am a person. I love the craft of software engineering, and sometimes I feel like we downplay that because I do think it's important to focus on craft work.
It is a
Um,
craft.
but
It's not a science. It's not an art.
it's
It's a
not a
craft.
science. It is a
It's a
craft,
craft.
yeah. And I think it is best learned through apprenticeship. It's best learned, in pair programming or in feedback, not just pull requests, but conversations. But I think a lot of times, certainly outside of a creative agency, I think programmers are often seen as the wizards, the most creative people in the building. It is kind of nice working at a creative agency where the programmers are seen as kind of the buttoned up ones who get their things done on time. But I do think that fundamentally, um, you know, when you're building systems as a software engineer, and I think all forms of engineering have. I work with real engineers, or I have worked with real engineers. I think software engineering is a softer engineering skill, but yeah, I mean, I think that the act of creation, I think that's fundamentally creative, and I think a lot of the best practices in getting better at being a software engineer, or a test engineer or a requirements engineer, or anyone involved in the craft of making software. I think it fundamentally is a creative discipline, and I think being able to talk about the work, being able to talk about abstractions and think about problems in the large, I think that is what really separates senior engineers from more junior engineers.
I posted something on LinkedIn about this the other day about like when you go to interview a software engineer, you could ask them some simple questions, and based on the way they answer the question can tell you a lot if they're like a really senior engineer, a really junior engineer, right? Like, and the way you would, as like a CTO or executive, you would answer it completely different because there's just a different level of thinking, in
Yeah.
the problem solving, right? But I feel like the creativity has kind of been lost in a lot of big enterprises in software engineering over the last 20 years. Like the way I describe it, at least when I started my career, like I sat down with somebody, they explained to me their business problem. I went back that day, figured out how to write the code, and then gave
Yeah.
them a new version of the app the next day, right? And that was the iteration cycle.
Yeah.
And then we got big tech where it's like, no, now we have a product manager and a project manager and a product owner and a QA person, and somebody does the release and somebody else does this thing. And you just stay in the basement and write the code. Keep your
Yeah.
head down.
And that I think that it's funny because you and I are of a certain age, and for me, I remember when Agile was like the hotness, right? And now I think Agile is like the man. Agile is like this thing keeping you down. The rules, and it is easy to become like a ticket taker,
Right.
and just be like, well, I take the ticket, I read the requirements, I do the thing, it passes the criteria, I get the ticket, and I think that
Next
we,
ticket.
yeah, we work really hard to try and develop architectural voice. I can't remember the book, but the author, but the Architect Elevator. It was the same guy that wrote like the messaging book, and he talks about like being able to ride the architect elevator, go up to, the CEO's office and explain technology, but also go down into the
Yeah.
basement and be authentic with engineers about, I understand the craft that you're working on and the challenges that you have. And I think one of the things that we do is every 2 months we have every team lead of the discipline just write a synopsis. It's basically like a half-page email. We write it in Markdown so that we can check it into Git. But and that little half-page synopsis, it can tell you so many things about where they're at on that journey, because they might summarize like a key moment as completed sprint 6 or something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. And you're like, what was in sprint 6? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, you should be making something and getting that feedback at whatever interval that is. And it's good living, like you were describing that, again, at the beginning of your career, being able to have an iteration cycle with end users, real
Yeah.
owners
Yeah.
every day, right? And
Yeah.
you're showing them something running in production every day. And a lot of us, the bigger the system gets, the more comfortable people get into like, oh, well, this is a CapEx project, not an OpEx project. So it's got a 5 year. It's like, oh my God, I don't want to live 5 years. Please no. Can we, what can I give you sooner than 5 years so that I can get some feedback? And so, yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I mean, it was funny. You've written this great book, Product Driven, which, I'm a fan. So I've
Nice.
got a copy of it.
Love it.
And it's got this voice of having that ownership. We write an open source book. It's less impressive than this, but it's a process. We're going to get it out there. Journey driven development.
Okay.
But I was comparing the two books, and I was like, man, I sometimes get really in the weeds of the mechanics, and I think it's because I see a lot of teams that are struggling, with mechanics. We pick up a new client, and a lot of times, they're struggling with getting value in production, I think a lot of times it is the bigness of companies and the safety of a company that's like, hey, we're doing all right, but you have to remind them of the disruption that's coming. It's like, oh, there's a bunch of little innovators over here, and they're going to come eat your lunch, and how are you going to innovate from the inside? And I think just reminding people that they don't have to be a ticket taker, that they can elevate their voice, and whether that vision is through, being like a mini product owner or being someone who's speaking with the voice of the customer. I think both of those things are similar ideas, and I think whether you're driving that down to an individual person or a small team, of like 5 to 7 people, I think that's the secret to really, stopping the bigness that keeps you down and giving your team a voice that can really sing.
I think everybody has the same goal of we want ownership in the teams. We want to delegate. We got to build multiple teams. We want the team to take ownership of something and go build something. Like as leaders, we don't want to have to micromanage them. We don't have to be the hero. We don't want to be the bottleneck,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it, right? So VML is a big company. You guys probably have hundreds, maybe thousands of software engineers across the
Yep.
world. How do
Yeah.
you solve this problem? How do you create teams that can go own, like, we're going to go do this big thing for Wendy's. Go do it.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I mean, the real secret is I didn't do it. The real secret is I'm on the team with everybody else, and I think there can be a tendency, whether you're leading a 5-person team. I see this with young engineers who get their first opportunity to lead a team, and they think their job is to like rework every line of code that everyone on their team does. And I think it's a breakthrough for most leaders to understand that someone on their team just did something different from how they would do it, and it's better, right? I think that's a journey that we, as leaders, we go through. It's like, that's not how I would have done it, and I like this better. And so I think VML, from its core, before I got here, we were already a pretty big company. I mean, we weren't 30,000 employees. We were probably hundreds or thousands of employees when I started it was 2010. But we'd been owned by, the founders of this little shop, had sold to a company 10 years before I got here. And so we were already part of a large machine. But it always felt like a small company to me. And I think when we're at our best, we don't think of the company as, oh, that's this, $3 billion a year company with a $1.5 billion, professional or technology services company, with, I think 12,000 people working in that space. They're not all engineers, but like you said, thousands are literally
Yeah.
engineers. And ideally, we're not in some office somewhere trying to like control all the teams and be like, comply, you did it wrong. And we try and create this culture
It's not
of saying,
possible when you're that big.
yeah,
Right? You gotta build some ownership
yeah.
and process and hire the right people and delegate.
And that is literally why we were, as we were trying to write down, what we thought might be the rules. Cause I did have the experience of coming here. And like you said, lots of companies are trying to do this. And yet I came to this place and it felt like they had unlocked something, but it wasn't written down anywhere. And I was like, well, why is this special? And I don't know that I don't know if we've cracked like the total why. But that was our attempt to start writing the journey driven development book, which
Okay.
it's on GitHub. And I mean, I think it typeset right now is about 30 pages, so it's a pamphlet right now. But it gets to this idea of it does talk about small teams and ownership and knowing that your team is empowered, and feedback loops and short feedback loops. And so, but the thing that we looked at or I was like, my team, I was like, you've worked at other places, right? And they're like, yes. And I was like, you know, I feel like this is the best place I've worked. And there are lots of great places to work, but this place feels still to me like the best place I've worked for making software. And I'm like, why, why is that? And I think it's because we're so focused on a customer journey. And a lot of times people say customer journey and they mean like a purchase funnel, and that's not a customer journey. Customers have their own journey, right? And it's like, your journey today is very different from my journey today. And how well you understand the intersection of what your customers, dreams, ambitions, hopes are, what your company's dreams, ambitions, hopes are, and the people that work there. And then, for us, it's our clients, dreams, ambitions, hopes. And that intersection of them is like, to me, is really a human centered thing, right? It's like getting to like, what is it to be a person in this world? And then how does that matter? And there's other little things that we talk about, like people say API first. And I'm always like, I don't think anyone is ever API first. Usually it's like a system that's been built 3 times and then they finally figured out what the API is and they're like, our new system's API first. And so I'm always like, oh, it's like API 6 or something like that. But I do think we talk about being API forward, which is saying, keep your API in mind. It is a thing that you need to design. It is a product. But we get there by sketching. And we usually are sketching UI because we're visual thinkers. It's the same reason that when we try and understand an AI model, we typically draw it in 2 or 3 dimensions because no one can process. Someone's like, oh yeah, it's like a 250 billion dimension search space. It's like, my head blows up. I go watch videos like 3 Blue, 1 Brown and try and sort things out again. But it's like, yeah, we're visual creatures, kind of seeing things from a perspective of a person's journey, and then coming to, how do you orchestrate that? How do you connect those systems? I think that's the path that we try and take.
Okay. Is there a certain playbook in how you operate your teams or train your teams, or like a certain pod system? You're like, every team has this sort of project manager or this kind of engineering lead and 3
Yeah.
engineers and a QA person. Like, how do you guys think about that if you have, dozens of these teams?
Yeah. Well, and because we're client service, we're also having to integrate into, and I'm always like, what clients am I allowed to talk about? So I'm referencing Wendy's and United Rentals because those are cases that are publicly available on our website. But, we're doing work for United Rentals in their systems. So we need to align our process with their process.
You're also
So,
augmenting them.
right. And so that means the process that we teach needs to be pretty flexible. I think it's agile. We also try and always draw inspiration from as much published work as we can. And so we'll have some clients that are doing, scaled agile for enterprise SAFe or something like that. And SAFe is great for big companies, but it can be a lot to learn. And so I don't know that anyone, and very few people I think really learn SAFe. But almost everyone that I've ever shown the Spotify engineering culture video to, have you ever seen this? It's a 14-minute video.
I don't think
Uh,
I've seen the video, but
yeah,
I'm aware of their
it was
pods.
it was the hotness in like 2013
Yeah.
or something like that, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, Spotify." And I had a couple big clients that were like, "We're going to implement, Spotify engineering culture." And
Yeah.
I don't know. What we implemented was not Spotify engineering. It was something else. It was this client's understanding of that, and I think every team comes to their own. People will say like, well, that's not real Scrum, or something. I'm like, well, nobody does anything real. Everyone is doing a little twist on it. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of the Spotify engineering culture video because it's short. And I'll tell you, I watch it every few years because I'll be introducing it to a client and I'll learn something new. And the last time I watched it, they were talking about like a Kanban board and their last column, the done column was they throw this out and it just keep moving because it's so dense. But it was like um, measured in production, right?
Okay.
Like you
Nice.
measured the impact that you planned in production. And I was like, that's done. And I'm like, that almost never happens. But it's a nice goal to remind your teams and come back to your teams and say, hey, that thing that you were planning to do, did you measure it in production? And oftentimes the thing that we end up doing is something that we didn't plan, right? I mean, that's the nature of agility is you are resetting the plan. So if you go back to your original plan, you're like, boy, we didn't deliver those three things, but we delivered these nine things, and these are actually better than the three we started with. And I think that is great when it happens, but it can be difficult to have that conversation with a client who's got a contract and a piece of paper that says you were supposed to do, these three things. And so, but it's like the nature of transformation, the nature of disruption is you don't always have a plan for everything you're going to do.
So let me ask you this. I think this is a great conversation about teams and how you manage the teams and stuff. But of course, I have to ask you, how is AI changing all of that?
Right. Well, and it's funny, you and I have been trying to schedule this for a while. And I feel like the conversation when we started this, I think it was like February this year, was like, AI is around everything. Certainly in the creative field, it was disrupting everything, like creative workflows, writers' workflows, and our parent company has a product, WPP Open. We just launched a version of it that is, directly available to anybody, whether there are customers or not. WPP Open Pro, and it's like giving you the ability to access copywriter as an agent or creative as an agent. We're going to still upsell you. We think that our actual intelligence, our human intelligence, we can beat that, or even more so, our human intelligence augmented with these tools, because we also have these amazing tools in house. But really, I hadn't disrupted the software development lifecycle. Then, I feel like we were doing experiments with tools like, Cursor, Windsurf, Claude, and clients were seeing, meager, I mean, 30% is not nothing, but that's to me within the realm of like, it's not like when we did DevOps, right? Like DevOps, that was like, I don't know, 10,000 times better, right? Or test automation, right? When nowadays maybe it's playwright scripts, but when say Selenium hit the scene and it was like, wait, what? And it's like, did you get 30% faster? No, you got like 1,000 times faster. And so I still think we're at the early days of that disruption, but I'm loving the tooling. We're doing now. Most of our clients are asking us to lead, projects where, and most companies have come around on saying, all right, I believe this agreement that says that you can have access to, put my source into context, right, of running models that these four giant companies own, right? And I think that people are getting comfortable with that model. And so the big clouds are going to have this intelligence capability. And then I think individual companies, and there are companies, again, like you can never talk about the really cool stuff, but we are building smaller models for clients. We're not building large language models for clients. I don't think anybody's doing that, but we are building models that are trained on data sets that our clients own, right?
Fine-tuned models.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Smaller machine learning models, they're just not, they're not large language models. We're connecting large language models with thin wrappers.
Sure.
And then, but we are doing the data engineering, and other teams at my company are more on the data science side. We tend to be the people building the data pipelines, connecting all the things.
That
But
feels
yeah, I
like
mean,
most of the development with LLMs is connecting a bunch of data together.
yeah, I was we were talking about something, and I was like, well, that is just a layer, right?
Yeah.
It's like there's just, and I think that's actually good. I mean, that's when software got really fast, was when we got to the point where, again, as much as I like software development as a craft, it's like, if you can build in a faster way, and you can empower teams to get to something I can talk about this year, the Hack Midwest hackathon. I've been a judge on that for probably about 6 or 8 years, and normally, like, I would say 10 to 15% of the participants have something running at the end of the hackathon.
Okay.
Everybody had something running at the end of the hackathon. So everyone was using these tools. Everyone was immediately getting like running prototypes and then iterating on running prototypes. And would I want any of this code to make it to production? I'm not sure. I mean, certainly some of the people were very talented engineers, but some of them were just, they were kind of, feeling the vibes. And I think that that's exciting for people that are exploring a space. And I think it shows possibility. I still want engineers in the loop, reviewing, and I think there's still a limit to how much code can be reviewed. But I think building abstractions, that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, it's disrupting everything. There's nothing that's left untouched.
So,
And if you have something that's untouched, just wait.
so I think there's a new term that's popped up. I don't know if you've heard this, but is vibe engineering. So it's like we had vibe
Yeah.
coding, and now we got vibe engineering.
Yeah.
And at full scale, I think that's our goal, right? Is like, how do we get all of our engineers? We have 275 of them or whatever. How do we get all of them to know what vibe engineering is? Like, I don't care so much that they know about what vibe coding is,
Yeah.
which is more like prototyping and a non-engineering related,
Yeah.
use cases most of the time. They all need to know what like vibe engineering is, though.
Yeah.
And so as a leadership, though, it's in the struggle of like, well, how do I get both working together? Like you said. So it's like, at our venture studio, I've got a really great product guy who's really good with all these AI tools, but he's not a software engineer. And it's like, hey, how do I pair you with a software engineer who loves AI just as much, but has all the engineering background, right? So it's like, pair the two of you together. So it's like, you bring the product side, you bring the engineering side. You're both AI nerds. Like, go build cool stuff together.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that one of the things that I say around here a lot is, when you're looking for a unicorn, first get the legs right, which is like get four legs, right? And and then people are always like, hey, you just gave me a workhorse, and I'm like, you're welcome. Unicorns don't exist, but there are individuals that are great at a number of things, and I think that's awesome. But it's usually so much faster to just pair a couple people up, and we have in the group that I work in, I'm the CTO of the Americas, but I have a partner who's the chief innovation officer. And so our department is technology and innovation. And our innovation team is chock full of these people that are like, maybe they were programmers at one time, or maybe they were never really programmers, but they are building cool stuff. And sometimes it's for clients. And we joke because we say, like, the innovation team is like reaching out to science fiction and seeing if they can make it real.
Yeah.
And the joke is, and sometimes they spell it REEL, because in advertising, sometimes you just need to make a short film, right? And sometimes that short film is enough to say, this was a cool prototype we built, and we have clients that pay us to build cool prototypes to inspire their engineers to create the future, right? And that's and understanding, the play between those things. Because my team is usually like, and now we want to put it in production for their customers to use directly. And that is a different kind of engineering. And just the risks are different. And so I think, but even those engineers they are using AI tools to help round out their thinking, right? Like, okay, I'm in a problem in this space and I've got these. Hey, what else should I be looking at, right? And sometimes AI gives you a really baseline understanding that isn't nuanced. And if you're an expert, you see the problems in it. But if you're not an expert in everything, it can elevate your thinking to a baseline.
It points you in some different directions.
Absolutely.
At a minimum, right?
And so we spend a lot of time here talking about how can you augment your thinking, right? We're not looking to replace your thinking. We're not looking to eliminate the human in the loop. We want to elevate the engineer in the loop. And so, yeah, giving them access to tools, giving them space to play. We have a team here. It's called the Good Vibes Casual AI Group, and it's just someone puts out a weekly challenge, and people are supposed to go and explore, through different AI tools, prompt tools, and just sort of understand what people are doing. And the innovation team, they're always like playing with Sora. Currently, the hot thing is making deep fakes with Sora. And there's a guy who works here. His Twitter, Luke Hurd, is a great, not his Twitter, his LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm sure he has a great Twitter too. But I saw it on his LinkedIn. But he's a good follow. He did a thing called Too Many Lukes, which was sort of like set to the tune of Too Many Cooks, if you remember that internet phenomenon from about 5 years ago. But it's all his like Sora deep fakery. He produced it in like 6 hours.
Okay,
it's terrifying. But check that out. It's worth he's worth a follow.
well, I really appreciate having you on the show today and talking about creative engineers. And I think AI for sure is changing how engineering works, but I think it's helping us be more creative, as you just discussed, right? It's like we can use AI to ask us questions, to give us idea. And I think a big theme of my book is we have to go more and more from being ticket takers and lower level engineering, right? If AI is going to write more and more of the code and more of some of that lower level engineering, we all have to be more creative.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the future. We've got to be more creative, and it's changing the roles and blurring the roles and what people can do, and it's changing all these things. So it's a fun time to be in IT.
And I think your point of it's always been creative. It's easy to get ground down into like ticket taking, and it's like leverage these tools and leverage this opportunity to elevate your work, your craft, and your creativity.
All right. Well, David, thank you so much for being on Product Driven today. If somebody wants to learn more about you or VML, where should they go?
Gosh, VML.com is the baseline. The work that I do at VML is called Enterprise Solutions. That's also explained on VML.com. For me, probably LinkedIn. Unlike a lot of places, I got there early. My LinkedIn is a little longer. I think it's got my middle name and my junior. But I think you're going to put that in the show notes. But that's probably the best way to find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Before we wrap up today's episode, we have a special resource for you if you're looking to elevate your development team to have more of a product-driven mindset. I have a fantastic free ebook about turning your code-first team into a product-first team. Please go to fullscaleteam.com/product-first-teams to download this free ebook. There's also a link in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Product Driven, and we'll see you in the next episode.